Okay, I think we are live. This I am Morihiko Nakara. I'm of course the music director of the South Carolina Philharmonic, and I'm very excited. I was telling my wife earlier that I'm super caffeinated today, as though I'm about to conduct a concert. But this is like the most caffeinated I've been, and not before a concert. But I'm so excited to be joined by Jessie Montgomery, who we actually met for the first time like 5 minutes ago,
Right.
officially face to face. We have three other American composers who will be joining us throughout this stream. And these are four composers whose works that I've been really into, so to speak, in the recent years, both in South Carolina and as well in other places like in Spokane, Washington. So Jesse's music first came to me. I think Starburst was the first piece I heard by Jesse, and I really instantly fell in love with it. It's a great opener, and we're going to play a little clip of that in a little bit off the YouTube. But I programmed it in Spokane, and then the same season we performed her records from a Vanishing City in South Carolina, which was this past January. And in researching for that piece, I learned that Jesse, you grew up in Lower East Side of New York
Right.
City,
Mhm.
and of course, Jesse is also a great violinist. And you started on was it Suzuki Method? Is that how you started?
Right. I was a Suzuki kid. Yep.
And and you still perform
I do.
as
Yes.
yeah
I play in
as
different chamber ensembles and orchestras and things like that. Yes.
right, yeah. So there's a for those of you who are interested, there's a great album of Jesse's string quartet music, right?
Yeah.
And
String quartet and string orchestra and
right,
solo violin. Yes.
yeah. And is it Catalyst Quartet? That's the
Catalyst quartet is featured. Yes, and public quartet as well.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I knew that you're a New York native, and you're still based in New York City
That's
then.
right. I am based in New York, between New York and New Jersey. I'm also currently working towards my PhD at Princeton. So I go back and forth. I'm like a commuter, but yeah.
Nice.
but
But everything is so. How are you doing during the
you know,
this this pandemic right now?
I'm doing fairly well considering. What if anything, this time is proven is that there are lots of there's a that we have we're very privileged in our family to have the things that we have, like house, home, family, um, each other, resources that we, in order to keep ourselves going. So we're doing pretty good, and just trying to stay safe and plan ahead as much as we can for what's happening. But yeah, in general, we've been, been it's been, very grateful for the things that have emerged and out of this time. So
Yeah. And are you working on commissions and things like
I
that,
am.
projects right now as we speak as well?
Yeah, luckily, commissions have stayed intact, as they're sort of, as they're the nature of a commission is that it's like a projected thing that will happen in the future anyway.
Right.
And so I've been fortunate to have those opportunities remain intact for the most part. The premieres themselves have not all necessarily survived, but they will in the future. But yeah, so I've been working. I've been working on some music. So
Yeah, that's great. And so I guess my first question to you, Jesse, is that so you started on the violin, and I caught I think your interview you did recently with David Allen Miller
oh yeah,
up in Albany,
yeah,
and I'm coming to you live from Northampton, Massachusetts. So
yeah,
it's Albany's very close, and a few of my colleagues from UMass play in that orchestra, like
right.
Erica Berlin on trumpet, and so on and so on. And you and David were talking about how this idea of improvisation, was sort of instilled in you from early days of learning the violin, and I thought that was quite cool. And so if you could talk a little bit about what your like early musical training on the violin was like, and then when did you catch that a spark for composition?
Yeah.
And who were some of your early inspirations or mentors in composition? How you kind of moved into that world.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Well, so yeah. I mean, so as I was probably was what I was discussing with David was about my very first violin teacher also worked with me on improvising. She worked with all of her students on ways to do just to be creative in your own way on the instrument, and that sort of value system was built in so early that it was a really nice segue into composing. And I have works with orchestra works is a little harder to accomplish, but I've actually recently wrote a piece that does have some improvisation moments in it.
Right.
It's just this idea of like, that when you're performing a piece written by a composer that has this map of music on, that you're supposed to follow, then I love the idea of like completely destroying that altogether and completely going out someplace else that's purely spontaneous, and then coming back to the written again, and sort of like the play between like total spontaneity and like a perceived order. Let's just say that.
Right. Exactly.
So I like that. I like playing around with that dynamic as a performer and also a composer. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And how much of, I'm just curious, when you compose, do you approach it from a violinist point of view a lot of times? Or, how did that sort of process for, writing maybe first for string quartets or string orchestras into this, the full orchestra or vocal works as you have been doing? How was that, transition?
Yeah, I think it's just a difference in like writing music with like a chamber music mindset, where there's going to be individual places where the music shifts and takes turns in tempo and in feeling that's in a way spontaneous, maybe among the players, and sort of like coming from that mindset and then going into orchestral writing, of course, is there isn't quite that flexibility. So then all the other elements of the score become so much more important, and the amount of and the sort of infinite ways in which you can use color becomes one of the main things that I end up sort of obsessing over. And so that's the more instruments, and then the wider range of combinations. And so I think it's sort of thinking about the big machine of the orchestra. It's really has woken up my imagination a lot in terms of my own perspectives of texture and color. So
one of the things I really love about your work is this whole rhythmic vitality in your writing, and I have to excuse me here because I am not a techie.
Okay.
At all, but I'm just going to play a little bit of the opening of your Starburst, sure. And this is the performance by the Kaleidoscope Chamber Orchestra out in LA, and we're just going to play like the first minute or so, and just to kind of illustrate this sense of rhythmic vitality and energy that's in a lot of your music that I just fell in love with.
Thank you. Such a good performance. I really like that
Yeah,
performance.
and for those of you who are interested, and nowadays, I mean the resources that we have available for for conductors, for artistic administrators, when we are searching for uh, contemporary works, contemporary composers. Kaleidoscope Chamber Orchestra is they do so many commissions every year. They play without a conductor, so you take out the biggest problem in music making right there. We always but just yeah, I just love I just love what they've been doing out. Such an energetic group, and I hadn't noticed this until just now when I was playing this clip just now. I just love the there was in the background, there was, you could see an audience member,
Yes, I
and
just
she was grooving along, she was
yeah.
grooving along with the opening of your Starburst. And I think it's just that's the kind of there's this infectious element, I think.
You know,
Infectious element is probably not a good phrase to use in this, so let me rephrase that. But
yeah,
there's this,
yeah.
it's just just very immediately appealing in that opening, and it is such, you're right, it's such a great performance of it. But is rhythm
Rhythm
of utmost importance, or
rhythm
how?
is of huge importance in my mind. And I know you're gonna have Andy on here, so I mean he talk about rhythm. That
Yeah.
guy's got rhythm coming out of everywhere. He's brilliant. And I just, I do think of, I do an occasion, I don't want to give away all my secrets, but I do have occasion to sort of think about things actually really like in terms of percussion, in terms of percussive uh, push and drive, and sort of in terms of like group, the way things are grouped together. I think of it in terms of like where certain hits would happen,
Yeah.
potentially in a percussion kind of piece or something. And then I also I'm also really inspired by like dance music in general, like all kind and any genre of any culture, just dance music in general. Um, is a really amazing resource for thinking about structures and pulse and so certainly those things are governing
Yeah.
a lot of some of my like maybe quicker paced writing.
Hmm. But and then contrasting, the pieces, for instance, SC Phil's performance of your Records from a Vanishing City is on a Spotify playlist that's
Mhm.
sort of
Yeah.
accompanies this interview today. And but then in that piece, and I won't get to play clips of that piece, but I urge everybody to check out the playlist and so on. I mean, there's just such moments of beautiful lyricism in there. It's just so picturesque with the bassoon solo in the middle section, then gets picked up by that muted trumpet solo. It's just it just gives you chills.
Mm.
And so this this whole wide array of your music is just it's I'm seeing a comment here by Caleb Young, who says, and I have to agree with this. I love conducting your music, Jessie. So
Oh,
after talked about how conductors we all evil part of the music
wow.
making, but we do love conducting your music,
Oh, it's so
Jessie.
nice
So
to hear that. Thank you
yeah.
so much for saying that. That's so nice.
And for those of you, and I again, this is such a kind of strange time in planning, as
Yes.
as it's true with every all of our all of our colleagues, performing arts organizations around the country. But typically in American orchestras, in the first subscription concert of the season, there's we play Star Spangled Banner,
Hmm.
and everybody sings, right?
Right.
And of course, that is such a uniquely American moment
Yes.
of on concert stage, I think. And I don't know. I mean, first of all, we don't know when anybody can open a season, so to
Right.
speak, for the upcoming season. And when we do, are we allowed to sing Star Spangled Banner? Right? That's
Yeah.
sort of the the big question: will there be a live audience, so
Yeah.
on. But we found, and I've been I have not programmed this particular piece, but Jesse, you have this piece called Banner,
Hmm. Yeah.
and then we have a clip here from, I think, Simple Chamber Orchestra. And so I think Catalyst Quartet is
Yes. Yes.
featured as a
Yeah.
soloist with
Yeah.
with the Simple Chamber Orchestra.
That's right. Yeah.
And so I'm going to play a little clip of this. So that's just a little short clip
Yes.
from your banner. And so first of all, you've developed a very close working relationship with the Simple Chamber Orchestra, right? In the
Yes.
recent,
Yes. Yeah.
and I think so. The particular clip I just played for you. I think everybody can access that. Again,
Yes.
Simple Chamber Orchestra also has a great sort of a digital library
Yeah. Yes.
of many of
They have
their
a
previous
wonderful,
concerts.
wonderful library. Yeah. The St. Paul Chamber Orchestra Concert Library is called. I see that I see that it's gone into the chat. So that's great.
Yeah,
It's a
and
really
then
wonderful resource.
yeah, and then what we what I would love to know a little bit more about actually is your most recent project with them. That was a combination of, was it three of your works with the
Yes, yes.
yeah,
The project that they did a rebroadcast the other maybe about a month ago of a
right,
project that I did. Yeah, where they took three. I was working in with a wonderful playwright named Harrison David Rivers, and he wrote this beautiful story, children's story. It was for a family concert that happened at Ordway. I don't know, 2 years ago now or so, and so they used my music as the sort of as the underscore and created this beautiful quilt of three of my pieces that they had performed earlier that year. So yeah, the relationship with St. Paul has been very active and just super supportive, and what a treat, because man, those are some great musicians,
Yeah,
and it's just
absolutely.
so yeah, so it's been a really nice, really great collaboration
And
over the.
that whole the production that you were talking about, I think that is also available.
That's also
The
on
video of that is available as well.
there.
So if you do have a chance to go check out the concert library with the Sample Chamber Orchestra, you could see that, as well as I think there's a video of Records from a Vanishing
There is.
City
Yes.
as well, so
Yeah.
which is an awesome performance of
Yeah.
that
It
piece.
is
So
very, very beautiful.
yeah, and then let's see, with the New York Phil, you're part of this Project 19.
That's right.
Right, and which is they commissioned. So were there 19 composers, or were there?
19 composers
Right.
who are women who, in order, as a commemoration for the passing of the 19th Amendment, which allowed women the right to vote. So they wanted to celebrate that by creating this commissioning project. Yeah. And so, of course, this it throws some plans around with the pandemic, but there's that piece will premiere at some point in the next whenever people can get back. But yeah, it's a really amazing project because it's like, and for any organization, it's a huge undertaking to commission that many works,
Right.
and
Yes.
that have a commitment over a certain period of time. So I think that was a remarkable move for the Phil, and just really honored to be a part.
Yeah. That's great. Looking forward to hearing more of your works. I'm looking forward to programming more of your works and sharing it with our audiences around the country in the coming years as well. And I just want to highlight this comment by one of our musicians in our orchestra, Petra Varnik. She says, "As a musician, so enjoy your music."
Oh,
Jessie.
thank
So,
you.
yes.
Oh, Petrea, thank you very much. That's very kind. Oh, I'm so glad. Hey, I mean, I'm a musician myself. I love the idea that it feels good to play. So
Yeah, that's
here.
and I've heard that from the other places where I've conducted your works as well. It's great. Yeah.
Goodness.
So
Okay.
yeah. Jessie, thank you so much for spending some time with us
Yes.
today. Stay well, and hopefully someday soon we will meet face to face. In
I hope so too. Yeah, that would be great.
looking forward to that
so
day.
much.
So
Yes.
yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Jessie. Thank you.
Take care.
And we have now John Fitzrogers joining us. And how are you, John?
I'm doing very, very well. Thanks. How are you?
Great. And you're in you're in Casey, South Carolina. But your house with the lighting, I thought you were in Italy or somewhere.
It wouldn't be bad to be in Tuscany. Sure.
Right. Right. So it's with the whole conductor composer relation. It's such an interesting thing. John's. How long have you taught at University of South Carolina? When
I'm
did you get
starting
there?
on my 20th year now.
And I got there in 2008. However, I knew your music years before that, and we were talking about that the other day. Again, this is where Albany Symphony comes in, right? So the Albany Symphony has been really a beacon of commissioning, performing, recording American music. I think that's really been one of their primary missions as an organization for many years. And so there was this there was a CD, I think it was called Brutal Reality is the title of the album, I think. And there was a piece by John on there called Virg. And I've had that CD for a long time. And the reason is because I'm not afraid to admit this. I bought that CD because I was looking for a recording of one of the other pieces on that album by Evan Chambers, which was, I think, Concerto for a Fiddle, right? And but I came across, that's how I got to know John's music. And then when I moved to Columbia to start work down there, I realized it's the same John Fitzrogers on that album. So I think it was so it was in 2009, I think, we performed Virg. And that then led to few other few other commissions and partnership. So that's it's been great. And of course, John, for those of you who are outside of Colombia, was really the founder and the driving force behind this great new music series called Southern Exposure. And so you and I have spent so many evenings of listening to new music and hanging out with new music makers. And I'm just so happy that you could join us today, John. And how are you doing, John?
I'm doing well. I think I'm doing about as well as the rest of America.
And you will be teaching. So are you going to be teaching anything in person this fall, or are your classes going to be basically remote or online?
It remains to be seen. At this moment, I am planning on teaching both remote composition lessons and remote classes, but things are still being negotiated. But that's the game plan at this point.
Mm-hmm. And John, let's see, you grew up in? Was it Wisconsin?
I did. Yeah, I grew up in central Wisconsin.
It wasn't Stevens Point.
It was, yeah. You have a great memory, yeah.
Stevens Point. For some reason, I just remember that. So how did you arrive at composing or composition? Was that a sort of a long road, or did you know sort of early on that that's what you wanted to do?
I started playing piano very, very young. I was maybe 4 or 5 years old. I started playing piano, and my parents found a teacher who was willing to take a young student that age. And so I studied piano all the way through college. But at some point, I think in my early teens, I discovered it was fun to make up my own songs. Right. In fact, it was more fun than practicing my scales. So nice. I started just improvising, much like Jessie Montgomery was just saying, just kind of making up my own things. And my parents very kindly said, well, we should see if we could get you some instruction and some guidance on that. So all through high school, I kind of split playing piano. I was very interested and very serious about jazz for a long time. And kind of did a lot of different things, but I think I started composing just by improvising and kind of making up my own songs.
Nice. And then you sang as well, or no? Or
I think calling me a singer would be pretty charitable. I have sung choral music my whole life, and I think
that's what I should have clarified. I think that's what I meant was. I thought you sang in a Tanglewood Festival chorus or something like that at one point. I know you were active choral chorister or chorus singer. Sorry.
Yeah, I did. For 3 wonderful years, I lived in Boston a couple of different points in my life, and for 3 years, I sang in the Tanglewood Festival chorus, which is the chorus for the Boston Symphony. Right. And that was not only a wonderful experience, but also a real education for me as a composer. I would often bring the choral scores, but then when we weren't singing, I would have the orchestral score as well, and I'd crack that open and was able to listen very, very carefully to orchestration and also watch the conductors, and had really wonderful guest conductors as well as Seiji Ozawa. So that was a great experience, informative. But yes, choral music has been very important for me throughout my life.
Nice. I actually there was a question I wanted to ask you from the chat stream, but I'm gonna save that question for a second here. But I know there's you and I, when we were talking about this chat earlier. You have mentioned maybe 3 or 4 different musical aspects that are important to you as a composer, as a musician, and I think we should talk about those. But before we start with that, I think the common thread really for all of these 4 composers that we have joining us today is that the way all of you treat rhythm. And that's something that, and each person is different how they work with that idea of rhythm and groove. And that's, but each with four composers, and it's a four different ways of really dealing with that I found fascinating. And I just love that aspect in your music. And with John's music, with your music, it's in the what seems to be a slower music that is still there's still some kind of underlining rhythmic things going on. And sometimes that's the most challenging as a performer, because sometimes we think of lyrical music and time gets all, goes out of the window sometimes. So the pulse does, but there is that sense of pulse even in the slow moving, or when the harmony is moving slowly, but then there's this the undulating rhythm underneath. So it's one of the aspects we love. But John, if you would, I'm gonna set this up for Virg, and we're gonna play maybe like the opening fanfare of this, and this is the recording by the Albany Symphony. So do you want to set it up in any way as far as the rhythmic aspect?
Sure. This was a piece that was commissioned by the Albany Symphony, and is very celebratory. It kind of opens with a brass fanfare. What you'll be hearing is what's called a hocketed rhythm, where the trumpets play different parts of a melody, but one trumpet doesn't play all the lines.
Right.
So you get this kind of almost like a weaving of different sounds and rhythms, and it's quite a complex texture. It's tricky to put together, as you know.
Right.
But I'm very interested in the idea of hocketed rhythms of multiple people kind of participating in the same melodic line.
Yeah, I remember this when we performed that. I think it was in 2009, and there's a stunning effect. But again, it does take discipline and a sense of just everybody just locking in, to that pulse in order to pull it off. But right. So here's the opening of Virg. That's just a great opening, I must say.
Thanks.
Yeah, and it's such a great example of this the Hakka Ting, as you mentioned, and it is interesting. Was this so? What was this written for or commissioned for a particular, like, an occasion? Was that how that came about?
I'm trying to remember. The piece is over 20 years old at this point, so I can't quite remember the details. But I know that the second half of the concert was a wonderful piece, the Ravel's orchestration of Pictures at an Exhibition. And that, of course, has brass music. And so one of the threads of the piece Virg is actually some of the melodic material of Pictures at an Exhibition. I'm a huge fan of Ravel's orchestral writing and have kind of studied his scores as sort of Bibles of orchestration. So that was a tie-in, I remember, to that particular piece.
So, but and I think you told me this story, or maybe I read about that, as far as but it's not an overt reference really to Pictures, and which is, I also love that. It's very subtle, but it's sort of companion to. So when they premiered it, Mussorgsky / Ravel Pictures was in the second half, and that's what we did back in 2009, I think. So and then that led to the commission of the Double Concerto, which was the concerto for two pianos, Marina Lomazov and Joe Rackers, and I think that followed the following year, I think 2010 or something like that. And one of the things that I think we mentioned, you mentioned Ravel, and Ravel is one of my favorite composers too, and especially in terms of color, right? Just it's the absolute master of color, which is ironic because I'm colorblind, but I hear all sorts of gray essentially, but it's just and I know color is important in your writing as well. So we have a little bit of I think the opening of the second movement of the Double Concerto, I believe, and this is, I think, our performance of it.
That's
right?
Yeah, that's right.
Right. So let me see if I can set this up. And then it gets quite complex as the interplay between the two pianos gets quite virtuosic and complex as we go. And it was called couplets. Is that?
Yes, that's the name of that movement. Yeah, right.
But the whole notion of this ensemble, the importance of ensemble and rhythm is that's what I was talking about. Even in the slower music, it's still there, and that gives us a great challenge as performers. Our executive director Rhonda Hunsinger is on it. She said, "Loved it then, love it even more now." So, yeah. Actually, our common friend, our mutual friend Dan Cook, who was also is a composer as well, and was when I started working in South Carolina, was the editor of Free Times, and he has a question. He says, "Ask John about the book he's working on. Are you working on a book, John?"
Well, I'm actually working on a composition right now, a project. But I've been working on a book for a while about composing music, And so it's still in draft form. And Dan, as you said, our mutual friend and an amazing writer and editor, has graciously kind of read parts of that book. So remains to be seen. I'm still working on the project.
Oh, okay. So do you have a sort of a targeted date, or it's
that's come and gone.
That's come and gone.
And also with the pandemic, my schedule has kind of gotten thrown a little bit. But yeah, I'm still working hard on it, and hope to return to it sometime probably next year, if I can carve out some time. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then let's see. I am going to. I would love to play this one more clip of yours, and this is from your Magnum Hysteria that was written for the Trinity Cathedral Chorus, and it's again, because of your, I think, background in choral singing, it's it's just such a gorgeous moment in this. That was quite a large scale work, right? I believe.
Yeah, it was a 45-minute piece, seven movements. Yep.
So this is from the third movement called Reigns of Nature. Such a beautiful end to that movement, and on a kind of changing the subject almost completely, but John and I have enjoyed taking in some live baseball games with the Fireflies. Of course, their season, I think, is canceled for 2020, but here's to someday soon. John will meet again in person, if not at a baseball game, but definitely next time I'm in Colombia. And,
indeed, I hope so.
And of course, I should mention, of course, that the latest commission was The Passing Sun, and we did a second performance of it earlier this year in February, and that performance is on the Spotify playlist. So please do check that out as well. If you go to the SoundCloud playlist, you will hear the complete performance of The Passing Sun as well. So John, great. Thank you so much for joining us. Great to see you. And
great. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you. And we have Adam Schoenberg is with us from Los Angeles, right, Adam? Is that where you are based? And again, same as Jessie, this is our first time actually speaking to each other in person, I think.
Hello.
But Um, this is, again, it's interesting to think about how we've gotten to know your each of these composers' work. So in case of Adam's music, it was, and it's also a testament really to one of the things I really love about my job as a conductor, especially being a music director of an orchestra in a city like Columbia, South Carolina, is that all the other great cultural activities that are happening in the city and how you can connect with one another and tap into those resources. So the reason was because Adam has a great piece called Finding Rothko, which was inspired by paintings of Mark Rothko. And Columbia Museum of the Art did a big Rothko exhibit back in 2012, I think. And I wanted to have some kind of tie-in thematically during that exhibit at one of our subscription concerts. And Adam's Finding Rothko was really the perfect fit for that. And that's how I really got to know Adam's music, and ever since then, the piece that you see here on the Spotify playlist is this great opener called "Go," and that's a piece that, again, I've done it in Spokane. I did it also in South Carolina, and again, it's such a fun piece to it's not easy to conduct, but it is definitely fun to conduct and perform. So glad that we can finally connect, Adam. And I think so. I'm coming to you live from Northampton, Massachusetts. I think you and I are, connected on Instagram and so on. And you spent some time here or in this area of Massachusetts. Is that right?
Yeah, that's my native roots. I was born in Northampton, Mass.
Oh.
I was raised in New Salem, Massachusetts, which is about 40 minutes from Northampton on the Quabbin Reservoir. And literally at the time there was about 750 people in the town, and I think even today there's less than 1,000. So very, very small town life, and just a beautiful place to grow up.
Do you still have family out this way, or do you ever?
Yeah, my parents still live in New Salem, bunkered up.
Okay.
They're right off the town common. And
right.
Yeah, my dad he has a studio that's attached to a barn. We grew up with apple trees, even had a cow.
Wow.
Yeah, it's different lifestyle.
Yeah, it is a beautiful part of the country, and it's sort of a coincidence, really, but it's I've always kind of enjoyed that connection, that there's a Northampton connection with you, Adam. But what was your early musical training like? Did you learn an instrument? Did you start with a piano, or how did you arrive at composition?
Yeah. And it was fun to hear. I've never met Jessie before, and it was fun to hear her background. Obviously, she's a professional violinist and a composer. I'm not a professional pianist, but I grew up playing and improvising on the piano, and really improvisation, which is certainly a common theme with the other composers today,
Right.
is very integral to my composition, my process. But my dad was and still is, basically a world-class piano improviser, and he had a quite a substantial career in the late 70s and 80s, and gave improv concerts all over New England. And so that was sort of what was in the house growing up, and a lot of different music, from Stevie Wonder to Bruce Hornsby to Mahler. So
Right.
just a lot of different eclectic tastes, and so that was just always surrounded by music.
Yeah. And what turned you onto composition, and who were some of your early mentors or inspirations?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I always share the same story, and now being a father, I have 2 young boys, and I think for so much of my youth, I was probably running away from music, and maybe in the subconscious because my father is doing it. Who really knows? So I came to composing actually quite late. I didn't start composing officially until my sophomore year in college. I went to Oberlin College, and then I transferred to the conservatory after my first year. So it's definitely a late bloomer. But there's always been a kinship to Copland, Bernstein, Ravel, Stravinsky, of course,
Right.
and then contemporary composers, and then just a lot of popular music, a lot of different styles of music. So I think, yeah, that answers that question.
Yeah, and so one of your signature works is, well, Finding Rothko, but also it's called American Symphony, right? The one you did for Kansas City
Yep.
Symphony, and there's a great recording of, I think, 3 of your works that's available. Do you find, like, what makes, I've always loved to ask, this question to American composers, maybe coming from Japan, I'm always curious, what makes it American? Is it it could be a loaded question, sorry.
Yeah, no, it is a loaded question.
Yeah.
And frankly, I don't have an answer. I mean, what's great about American music today, I mean, you've composers from all different backgrounds, socioeconomic backgrounds, and people are, there's also so much more liberty. You're at liberty today to write the music that's inside of you. And I don't think that people feel pressure to write in a specific style. There's just sort of this openness to expressing who you are as an artist, and that's okay. So I don't really know what defines American music. And of course, we've always said Copland, but then you have Ives,
Right.
but both used quartal, quintal harmonies. So, our fourths and fifths part of it, a certain rhythmic vitality, but also really, I think, a sense of optimism in a lot of American music. I know my music in particular is optimistic, and by nature, in many ways. But yeah, it's really hard to define what that means. Yet, for whatever reason, I obviously, yes, I'm American. I feel like my music really is quite American.
I think in that way, it's really a reflection of America as a country, right? Hopefully, it's that everybody can feel free to be him or herself in terms of their beliefs or their artistic beliefs too. And I think it's that kind of flexibility, I hope, is also sort of not just in the part of the creators, as in composers, but also in the minds of the listeners and concert goers as well. Hope at least programmers, conductors, administrators, and so on. The clips, we have a few clips actually from your violin concerto that you've written for Akiko Myers, called Orchard in Fog, and I think this is the premiere performance, right? I think.
Yeah, with San Diego.
Yes,
Yes,
San Diego, and here's where there are 3 different spots, and I have no idea which tab is which. So it's gonna be, and somehow I hit the correct one. So this is so we could just set this up a little bit, Adam. So, and it's the wonderful thing about the social media also is that I noticed that every time you and I have some kind of interaction on Instagram, and always, and Akiko also joins the conversation, and I've always told Anne that I would love to do this piece with her at some point, and but this is the first spot is the end of the first, I believe, the first movement. So the concerto is in 3 movements, right?
yes.
And it's like I shouldn't say like slow, fast, slow setup, but it is sort of.
Oh, no, that is
yeah,
the setup.
That is
what it is. I mean, it's an unusual concerto, but yeah, it is slow, fast, slow.
And then it does remind me, because I think last time when we had Anne in South Carolina, we did Prokofiev the first violin concerto by Prokofiev. So it's the kind of the similar setup in terms of the fast, the slow, fast, slow kind of thing. So we'll start this here. This is the end, starting this. So that is such a stunning effect. Would you like to sort of share with our viewers the technique you use
Oh
there?
yeah,
It
yeah.
is such a that's a stunning it's such a stunning effect, you know.
Oh, well, thank you. And it's funny, but Jessie was also talking about use of improvisation, which within an ensemble, which of course presents its own set of challenges, but depending on how you set it up, you can control the environment. And so what's happening is the first and second violins are all using metal practice mutes, which not every professional violinist enjoys using. There's
Right.
a little bit of pushback.
Yep.
Less so with San Diego, more so with other orchestras. But that a metal practice mute really, really mutes the sound, and it sort of adds this little metallic flavor and color that I really like. And so I have this in the first movement, everything is sort of rising up, and in the end of the third movement, things are going down, and using the same technique. So it's an aleatoric box notation where I write the scalar pattern and basically tell every string player to be asynchronous, so they're not playing in time together, and it's very whispered. And then Anne comes on top with a specific rhythm of the scale, and then the harp and the vibraphone and other people are doing the scale at slower levels, and it essentially creates what's called like a shepherd tone. So it always feels as if the music is rising and getting higher and higher, but just keeps perpetually recalibrating itself, and sort of it's this perpetual circle.
Yeah, it's it's just it seems like it just keeps on ascending, and it just you as a listener, it feels like it'll just keep on going up and never right. It's such
exactly.
such a stunning effect in at the end of this, and then I'm going to pick it up. I think there's a slight pause here, but then I'd like to skip a little bit of this the second movement, the fast section, and this I think for as a listener, what should we be focused on? It's in this movement.
Sure. And so this piece, which we didn't entirely set up, is had a very specific narrative. It's sort of a very personal piece. It's a very romantic work, and sort of about this old man, sort of almost like my love story to my wife, because my wife and I were married in an apple orchard based on the photograph that's actually called Orchard and Fog that this photographer took. And Adam Lapson is his name. And so the first movement is present day. This old man is wandering back to the orchard where he was once married, and sort of reflecting back on his life. And then the second movement, which you're going to play some part of the second movement, is a flashback, and is really the dance movement where he's in his youth and he's with his wife and sort of just in the moment more. And so this is a very groove oriented movement, minimalist in many ways, and uses a very common minimalist technique, which is known as a layering technique. And in this context, literally every 8 bars, something new is added, so that you can sustain interest. And eventually you run out of enough players to play all the lines, and so then at that point you have to go somewhere else.
Right. So this is the little clip of the second movement of this. I think we see what you mean by layering. It's and I think there's similar things in Go as well.
Sure.
A little bit of that going on as well. And I just have to share with you. I think it's left on that track. So on the Spotify playlist that opens with your piece with Go, or I think this was the performance last year, January of 2019 or something like this. And right at the end, there was an audience member who just yelled out his approval. It's like we end and there's you hear this somebody in the audience saying, "Yeah." And we before anybody claps, there's like as soon as we hit the last note, and I thought we just had to leave that in there. It was
great. I love reactions like that.
Yeah, such a perfect reaction because it's just so so energetic and as with this such with this rhythm, and as at the end of the piece where it just kind of builds and builds, and so I guess this person was just compelled to shout out. So we had to. I think that's still on that track, and then Adam, we'd love to ask you a little bit about. I know you also do. Have written a lot of music for film and TV, done the soundtrack work. So how did you get started in that? And of course you're in LA now. So and then I think we have a clip of your something from the documentary that the film score that you've done for that. But how did you get started in that?
Yeah. So I mean, yes, I do live in LA. I would love to be the dream forever since my sophomore year in college, literally, which hasn't changed, although it has yet to be achieved, but I'm still not giving up. The dream has always been to write one piece for orchestra a year and score, one film or one show. So, I'm very grateful and feel quite, lucky and fortunate to make a living writing orchestral music. And that's primarily what I do, but I've had some opportunities to score some film and do a little bit of TV. But it's always been my passion. I wrote my dissertation at Juilliard on Thomas Newman, one of my favorite film composers. I've always been drawn to a lot of great film music. And I also, for me, as a composer of primarily concert music, you work alone. You're by yourself the majority of the time, and when it comes to scoring a film, you're a collaborator and you're playing a very small role in a much bigger picture. And the power of music in film is phenomenal and unbelievable, because depending on the director and what they're asking of you, things can either be very emotionally ambiguous, where you're not going to really dictate how you want someone to feel, or other times you're going to sort of persuade them to feel a certain way. But I just love, to me, it's the greatest synthesis of all the arts. I love it. And yeah, it's nice when those opportunities come up.
Yeah. So we're going to play just a little bit of this, your score to That Far Corner, which was the Frank Lloyd Wright in Los Angeles. So that was a documentary. And I think this is the Hollyhock House thing. So do you want to set that clip up as I'm getting ready to?
Oh, sure. So this is all about Frank Lloyd Wright's work in Los Angeles, which was really during his darkest period. There was this horrific fire. First of all, he was having an affair, and the woman and daughter that the affair was happening with, the woman and her daughter were burned in his house in Wisconsin. And then he essentially sort of reset his life and came out to LA. But a lot of the work that he did in LA, these 5 specific homes, are very pre-Columbian, Mayan, Aztecan, very earthy and grounded. And so this is sort of setting up this famous Hollyhock House in Barnsdale Park, which was supposed to be more of a performance space. And there's a theater there to this day.
Nice.
All her dreams of building a theater were never realized. The house Wright produced for her is plenty theatrical on its own.
When Wright designed Hollyhock House, he not only...
So that was a short clip, but yeah, it's how long was that process for this particular documentary? From
It was
sort of working on it through the production and all of that.
so like most film projects, that's always cliche. You're out of time before you begin. So I think I was brought onto the project in November of 2017 or 2018, I forget. And there's some preliminary work, but then it really didn't kick in until the picture was locked around February, and I had about 4 or 5 weeks to deliver a fully mixed score, and it was 46 minutes of music for a 53-minute doc or something like that. It was 56. It was a lot of music.
Wow, that's great. And but this you won the Emmy for this score, correct?
Yeah,
so
I received an
congratulations.
Emmy for the music. Thank you.
Yeah. So, and I think this episode, the whole episode, I think is available on YouTube. So here, if any of you listening out there, watching out there, would like to check that out, I think the link is in the chat stream. So, Adam, what are you working on now?
This very moment, I'm working on a concerto for orchestra.
Oh,
Yeah, about a 30 to 35-minute piece. It's going to be a big piece that, like all composers, it's supposed to be premiere. It's for the Atlanta Symphony and for Robert Spano's final season,
right.
which is technically this coming season. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed. The premiere is scheduled for February. I have no idea if we will even remotely have live performance then. I hope so, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, great. And you'll be in Atlanta for that premiere then?
Oh yeah, for
Right.
sure.
Yeah, great. Awesome. Yeah. Again, with same as Jessie as well, but Adam, it's finally it's great to finally connect with you in
Likewise.
person, and
Likewise.
using this pandemic to kind of be able to do things that we might not really maybe hard to really find time to do in our normal lives. And so thank you so much for joining us today. And again, one day soon, hopefully we shall meet in person, and looking forward to more of your music, and I'm definitely looking forward to bringing more of your music to our audiences around the country. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me, all of us, and I hope to meet in person for a physical person. So thank
Right.
you.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. And then we have Andy Akiho with us. Andy, you're in Portland. Are you in Portland, Oregon now? Is that? Or you're
I'm
in
pretty
Oregon?
much living there, but
Yeah.
I'm in San Francisco at the
Oh,
moment.
okay.
Yeah.
So when did you move out to Oregon from New York City?
I was trying to be bi-coastal
Yep.
between New York and Portland, and I started around September 2018. Yeah.
Okay, great. And then seems Portland, Oregon seems. I mean, there seems to be such a active and vibrant new music scene there. With a lot of great chamber ensembles that are doing a lot of new music and so on. And of course, the Oregon Symphony does a lot of American music and do a lot of commissions as well. So, are you enjoying Portland so far?
Oh, I love it out there. I'm very inspired out there by nature and all my friends there and the musicians.
Yeah, great. So Andy, for those of you who might be watching this from outside of South Carolina, Andy, you grew up in Columbia. Is that in South Carolina, right? Or
Yes, I was born and raised.
yeah,
Lived there for 23 years.
nice. And then I think so. You played in a youth orchestra too, right? I think, or not?
Yes, in high school.
In the high
was in
school,
youth-
and then
youth
you went to
orchestra.
university. You did your undergrad at University of South Carolina.
Yes,
Yeah, and then so
and percussion.
right. And so it's one of those things. Again, it's kind of interesting because, Andy, I think I came across your music before realizing, and I had already, I think, programmed one of your pieces somewhere, like in Spokane or something, before I realized that you were from Columbia, from South Carolina originally. And the reason for that, was, I think, let's see, it might be out of order, but I think somebody, and I mentioned Dan Cook earlier, from formerly the editor of Free Times. And Dan is a mean ping pong player. And, the Free Times office back then had a ping pong table. So sometimes, you're walking down on the main street and you run into Dan, he will challenge you to a game of ping pong. Of course, he will kick everybody's butt. But then he shared this piece with me. He goes, there's a concerto for ping pong. And I'm going, what? And then, so this is the, let's see, do I have that? Let's see, here we go. So for those of you who are not familiar with this is sort of how I came into contact with Andy initially. So I figured that might be a perfect way to introduce you, Andy, to those of you out there who might not be familiar with your music. And we'll talk a little bit more about Ricochet, the ping pong concerto. But somebody has alluded to this. So you were trained as percussionist, right?
Yes.
Initially. But when what was the point in which then you also became interested in steel pan?
When my first interest sparked, it was at University of South Carolina.
Yeah.
Jim Hall, Chris Lee were there, right. And they had the palmetto pans.
Yep.
And when I first got there, it was an awesome time in the percussion department because you had like West African drumming starting, had the steel pan, Brazilian ensemble. I mean, we had everything, and I was still doing concert band, orchestra, drumline, all that stuff, right. And percussion ensemble. So it was just fun to put all that together. And that's when I started reading pitches. Mm-hmm. I could read rhythms because of drumline and stuff. But when I got to college, I was starting to read pitches. And as I was learning marimba and steel pan, I developed more. It felt more at home to learn steel pan a little bit. For some reason, I connected to it more. Yeah, and I loved the sound. I'd never really heard it before that, Oh,
really? Okay. And didn't you actually spend some time down in Trinidad and so on?
Yes. Jim Hall and Chris Lee and the whole crew talked me into going down there after I graduated. They're like, you got to go to the birthplace of pan.
Right.
You got to experience Panorama down there because they have the full orchestras, 128 players.
Oh, wow.
And it was just amazing to go and experience that,
Yeah. And was that sort of your pathway into composition and composing?
Most definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, most definitely.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
So after my experiences in Trinidad, I was like, all right, I got to move to New York or LA. I got to be in a big city. And I ended up moving to New York and just roughing it out for a couple of years. But I started playing in steel bands up there. And then I started arranging for a steel orchestra with my friend Freddie Harris. We would arrange for a big steel orchestra, and you would take pop tunes and soca tunes, calypsos, and arrange them for the full band. So I got a little taste of composition with that, because the arrangements are they end up being like crazy. You take these songs and you do all kinds of stuff with them. So that was my first real like kind of into creating more. I did a little bit just with percussion and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But nothing real deal. And then I think that really got me into writing for a large ensemble. And then I started writing for other instruments about 7 years later, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how was that transition? Now you're writing for, big orchestras and
I just got thrown right in the fire.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I got like around 2008, I started going to Manhattan School of Music.
Okay.
No, 2007, 2000. I was about 29 years old. And I just started writing for all my friends in the contemporary performance program.
Okay.
And every concert they would end up doing one of my pieces, because I was writing for the crew. They were like my family, so I was just writing for them all the time. And then I was there as a percussionist.
Right. So
I would stay up all night writing, and then by day I was a percussionist. And then from there, I just started writing more and more. And I guess about a year later, I was becoming more of a composer than performer. Yeah.
And yeah. And let's see. The first clip the next clip I'm going to share is the piece that you played with the Friction Quartet. And I wanted to specifically share this clip because one of the members of the Friction Quartet, Kevin Rogers, he also went to University of South Carolina. And he used to actually play, and he was playing in the orchestra in the violin section when I first actually got there. And then also for the listeners who maybe have not heard all the different things you can do on a steel pan, you kind of get a sense of Andy demonstrating some of this. And it's a great camera work with this as well. So this is called In Exchange by Andy. And it's in the middle of this. So it's just a little preview of In Exchange, but you kind of get a sense of all the awesome things you can do on steel pan that maybe a lot of people might not realize. But that's one thing working with you, because we also performed your steel pan concerto, Beneath Lighted Coffers, a few years back, and you were the soloist. You played a solo part in that, and I was just both astounded by all the different techniques and sounds you can make on a steel pan, but how you can notate all of that, as well in the score. So it's just it's an astounding thing. And you sent me a clip, and this might actually, hopefully this works. Okay, so you sent me a clip. I think you recorded this for the Charlotte Symphony when you performed this steel pan concerto up there in Charlotte, and you kind of get the this is just like a solo section for steel pan, so you kind of get a sense of just hearing just the instrument here. So yeah, that was a fun piece to put together with you and with the orchestra. And what since you moved out to Portland, what are you up to? What are you working on?
Well, Oregon Symphony, just with Colin Curry and Dan Zemeyer conducting, they premiered my percussion concerto back in October. That was a lot of fun, and right now I'm doing like the sequel to the ping pong concerto.
Oh,
it's for Shanghai and Guangzhou, but this is a kung fu concerto, and it's actually more like it's sort of an orchestra concerto. But I made a film to it, or I'm still working on that too, the film. And
okay,
it's
so projecting the film as the orchestra plays, kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's really inspired by like Southern style Wing Chun and the philosophies of Bruce Lee. Yeah. So it's kind of a homage to him. I'm working on a percussion quartet with Sandbox Percussion, a 75-minute, 11 movement work for them.
Wow.
Yeah. And then a Simulon concerto for Chester Englander.
Okay.
And No Exit, based in Cleveland, Ohio. So yeah, and a tiny pice for Catalyst Quartet. Doing like a minute piece.
Okay.
But yeah,
Great.
they got this cool project. I think it's still going on. I hope it. And Amani Wins. I'm really hyped to write for them too. Yeah,
that's fantastic.
We're working on a piece.
Yeah. Let's see. Petria, Petria.
Oh yeah,
from the orchestra.
Yeah. Hey.
she has a perfect commission idea for you.
Oh yeah.
You see it?
Oh yeah, let's do it.
Steel pan double concerto.
Nice.
Petria
is amazing. I would love to write for
that would be that would be a first, right? Oboe and steel pan double concerto. It's probably never been done before.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And I do have it's just running over a little bit, but it's it's not like the producer is telling me to quit. So I do have this clip, the excerpt of the percussion concerto that you were talking about, the piece you wrote for Colin Curry, and this is, I think, the performance from in Huntsville, Alabama, and I just, being Japanese, I just love this. There's a whole section. You will see what I mean when I cue this up, and I'm hoping it's again the right clip. Okay, so, and Andy, I remember with the steel pan concerto too, in the orchestral percussion section, they have all these bottles, like empty bottles of Jameson and other unnamed beverages, and that became musical instrument. In this instance, I mean, you have all these rice balls. And just you got to listen to this too. That is crazy. Love it. Yeah. So, Andy, we gotta work together again soon.
Yeah, I'd love to. That was a
And
lot of fun.
love to have you come
Thank
up
you.
to UMass too. 'Cause
Oh, yeah, love it
you've
up
worked
there.
with
Yeah.
Ayano before as well, I know. So, and I think Sandbox guys were filling in for Ayano during
Oh,
their
nice.
sabbatical recently. So yeah, and I have heard some of your percussion music in pre-recital juries, the pre-recital hearings that they have to do before like their senior recital, junior recital, and so on. So it's your music is out there. So
Thank you.
we got to work together again. And
Yeah, that'd be an
yeah.
honor, man.
Stay safe.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I always have fun working with you. Yeah. Thank
So
you.
yeah, thank you. And stay well and take care of yourself. And let's see.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks everybody. It was great hearing everybody, Jesse
Yeah.
and John and Adam.
Are you all still? Are you? I can't see who is in outside of the studio. Kristen, if everybody's in the still hanging around, we could have everybody come in for a one. There's John. There's Adam.
Oh, cool. It's the crew.
Yeah.
Where's
the
Jessie
COVID
at?
crew.
Yeah, I think
Oh,
I know Jessie had to go. Yeah, but
Oh, we miss her. Yeah,
yeah.
she's awesome.
oh no, Jessie says I'm here.
Hey.
Come on in. Wait, I can't. Andy, what are you?
Oh, sorry. Get the mask.
Sorry, I thought. Right.
Okay.
Exactly. There's too many people. It's
Yeah.
it's gotta be. Yeah. So no, this is Jessie. Yes, welcome back.
Hi.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you so much. This was new thing we were trying. To bring together all of you in this format, and I definitely had a blast being able to talk to you and learn more about you and be able to share some of your music with everybody. So thank you, thank you all of you for joining us, and and it's one of these things. I think being an American orchestra, I think it is one of our missions to program and present, and to works by American composers, and as we were saying earlier, just the wide range and stylistically of music that's available to us now. And it's just so vibrant and versatile, and it's such a great treat for us as musicians, orchestra members, conductors, and it's such a great treat for our audiences too. So thank you so much for all of your creations, and hopefully we can all work together, make music again, performing your music again together sooner rather than later. So thank you again. Any closing thoughts, any of you, before we go?
Viva new music.
Right on.
Forever.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for this opportunity to connect. This is great. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll do this again
Yeah,
someday.
I'll see y'all later tonight.
Yeah,
Just kidding.
without being separated by these screens, we could all be in the same room again together.
I think we're in 5 different cities, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
It's
so.
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
it's one of the weird benefits of this. In some ways we are closer than before the pandemic, but obviously, I mean, it's just in so many other ways we just can't be together, which is the meat and potatoes, so to speak, of music making and being a musician. So here's to hoping that they will come again soon in a safe way, and I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in, either live or later when this is archived. And I know we put up all these live comments And I think, yeah, I think this comment will stay up. So if you are, if you're interested in visiting, I think all of you have websites, right? And social media handle and so on. So to kind of check out more of their music and all of the things they're creating, and listen to some of the pieces and watch some of them on YouTube. I think they're great resources to do that. So check that out. So thanks for joining us, everybody, and everybody take care of yourselves and stay safe. And till we can see each other in person, we'll stay well. Thank you.
That's,
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you.
See you. Take care.